Today's guest is Zehra Mahoon. And Zehra, we had the best conversation. It was a little out there, maybe for some people. We talked about channeling and flow. And if you're a fan of that and law of attraction, then you'll love this episode. She's just a wealth of information. I learned so much and I got a really good tip from her at the end. So I highly recommend this episode. Our energy was like really connecting, but she's a master mindset and law of attraction coach and manifestation expert. In fact, she talks about how she wrote her 12 books, kind of crazy, but she's the creator of the Unlimited 40-day law of attraction workout. So a mental workout instead of a physical one, it sounds like, and the Unlimited Universe Mastermind. So after committing to completely transforming her self-worth in 2006, she went from being massively in debt to owning multiple properties and creating a thriving business, as well as healing her own relationships. I love her story and her backstory about when she was younger. So very, very, very interesting, and interesting how our childhood kind of informs us of our adulthood. So anyway, she helps individuals identify the blockages that are keeping them from achieving success. And she helps them to change their self-talk and develop new thinking habits that open up a world of new possibilities. So let's listen to our interview now. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And I think this is going to be a good one because I was just talking to my guest, Zehra Mahoon, and she is going to be, she's somebody who just is inspired at the moment. And she doesn't feel like a need to have a plan for any kind of conversation, and some people, are so like set up that they need to have a structure or an outline. And I love it. And I think it's going to be really a fascinating conversation. So welcome, Zehra. Zara.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
her name is Zehra, and it's like Sarah, but it's Zehra.
Yeah,
Zehra. Yes.
got it. That's
Yes.
perfect.
Yes. So why don't you just start by talking about who you are, what you do, and your backstory, like how you got
Okay.
into doing what, if you've done it since you were a child, or if it's some transformation happened along the way.
Well, yes, I have been doing it since I was a child. I've been asking questions since I was a child and getting into trouble since I was a child.
Because you were asking questions.
Yes,
Oh,
I was asking difficult questions. I grew up in an atmosphere where I went to a convent school and belonged to a Muslim family. So I had two cultures and two belief systems. And I was constantly asking questions because I needed to find a link between them because they were so different. And so, like I used to ask things like, why will one religion go to hell and the other one will go to heaven? Like, why God? What does God see with this other group that's wrong? Like how can God be fair and then God can do these things?
well,
So
those are good questions, right? Why did your parents put you in a non-Muslim faith school that would
uh,
create this kind of confusion?
well, it was kind of a tradition. So my grandmother went to a convent school, my mother went to a convent school, I went to convent school. Education was supposed to be better, superior.
So you're supposed to ignore the religion stuff and just get the education.
Yes, that's right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Just be quiet and don't ask questions.
Don't ask questions. Just go there. Just don't attend religion class.
And they probably didn't have any good answers for you, right?
No, they didn't. And this is why I got into trouble. And in the end, I stopped asking questions because it wasn't really getting me anywhere on either side. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do my own thing. And I'm not going to listen to anyone because clearly they don't know what they're talking about.
I'll figure it out on my own.
Exactly. And I did. I went reading, listening to all sorts of presentations and books about all sorts of religions and cultures. And then in the end, I discovered law of attraction. I was brought to law of attraction, and there is where I found my answers.
Now, I would be curious how you did that and what age you were, because of course, here in the US, were you in the US, or you in from Toronto? So were you always in Canada?
No, I wasn't. I came to Canada in 2002.
Okay. So, and you were saying, if you're okay with me saying your age, you're
Sure.
okay. You're 54. So doing the math, you were much older when you came to Canada.
Yes, I
That,
was.
you know, you're a grown adult. So a lot of people here in the US
Mm-hmm.
learned about law of attraction, me included, from The Secret, the
Mm-hmm.
book. And I think Oprah introduced it to a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was like 2000. I don't know. I was going through my divorce, I think, at that. It was like 2006 or so.
2005
So
to.
how did you get introduced to it?
Well, you see, here's the thing. It got called Law of Attraction when the movie Secret was done, but it's not a new concept.
No. Mm-mm.
The concept's been there, and so many of us have been on that journey for a very long time. So this, in fact, the first time I heard the term law of attraction, I was confused and didn't want to have anything to do with it, because I was like, okay, this is probably some kind of romantic, or something to do with uh, I,
Dating. Yeah.
yeah.
I thought
So
it's how to get the man of your dreams type of thing. That's what
exactly,
I
and I was
thought.
like, okay,
Yeah.
not looking for that, don't need that, have my man by my side.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so true. I'm glad you said that, because I felt the same thing. It's like,
Exactly. So
what
I
do you want to
ignored
attract?
it.
You want to attract like a soulmate, right?
Well, yes, and I wasn't looking for that. You see, I was looking for life skills and improving my life, and becoming the best that I could be, and manifesting wealth, and things like that. So this turned me off. I didn't want to have anything to do with it until I finally understood that it wasn't. It was the same stuff that I had always been studying, and I actually started reading nonfiction when I was a teenager. And it always came to me. It's a funny story. If you have a few minutes, I'll tell you. It was a funny story because it was my teachers who always brought it to me. So my first nonfiction book was given to me by my marketing teacher when I was 14, 15, no, not 14, 15, when I was maybe in my late teen years. And then from there
What was
on,
the book? Don't leave us hanging. What was the book? Do you remember?
it was Machiavelli.
Okay.
I will never forget that. It was Machiavelli,
Uh,
Prince,
huh.
The Prince
Interesting.
by Machiavelli. So
So was it more of a historical, like
no, no,
nonfiction? No.
it was more of a book about strategy, strategic thinking.
Mm, okay.
So I got that from a teacher, and then when I went on to do my MBA, my teachers just kept my finance teacher gave me my next nonfiction book, and that was what was that? In fact, I think it was The Little Prince, which again is by Alexander Dupre. Beautiful book, and that's about the philosophy of life. And from there on, The Alchemist, and I don't know, whole bunch of books that were along the same lines. They were all about self-discovery and how to think. And then I went on to work in the financial industry. I was in an investment bank, and guess what? My supervisor gave me another book.
You are attracting books.
I was attracted to books.
Yeah.
Everywhere I went, my mentors gave me these books, and these books created questions, much as they answered questions, but they created more questions. So I was on the hunt all the time. I wanted this stuff, and read a lot of books. I mean, so many people are part of my journey: Napoleon Hill, Maxwell, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, like all of
Yeah.
them, Eckhart Tolle, all of them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Abraham Hicks,
Yeah,
yeah.
I had when I spoke of Oprah, 'cause a lot of stuff I learned from her and her show, and it's sad, but to think about it, but that was my source. So now she's not on, so she can't be teaching people. But yeah, but she introduced me to a lot of people
Yes,
that were like the authors of The Secret, and Eckhart Tolle was so
yes,
powerful to me. And she did a
exactly.
webinar with him on his book. It wasn't The Power of Now, it was his other book, The World something about, yeah.
Earth,
And
Earth.
yeah,
I have it
I'll think
on
of it,
my
but
shelf
yeah,
somewhere.
but yeah, if and I think I've mentioned it before on episodes, but You can Google that Eckhart Tolle webinar with Oprah on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
But they go through every chapter, and I tuned in before webinars were a thing on Monday nights, I remember. And super. He is a fascinating dude.
Oh, so many fascinating dude.
Yeah.
But you know what? His story is amazing. I love his story. And it has always been an example to me of someone who changed overnight, literally, and created something magical out of his transformation.
A new world. That's what it was. I knew it would come. Yeah. So one of the things you said is when we were talking before we recorded is that you channel things. So you channel and you get very inspired in the moment, and things come to you. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to, because I don't know that people feel comfortable doing that.
Yes.
And I've learned, and I still have a lot to learn, but I just, first of all, explain what it is, and tell me how a lot of people want control, I think. And so channeling is letting go of control to me. Yes. And so it's kind of like trusting that there's something else that will, you're not forcing it from your like ego brain or your logical brain, that you're just, it's coming from a deeper place, a soul place, a heart place. So tell me, like, when did you realize that? How did you learn that? And what can you share to listeners about how that works?
So I realized later on, in fact, only a couple of years ago, that I had been doing it forever. I just didn't know I was doing it. And what it is it's focus. It is laser, it's being laser focused on the task or the thing that you want to accomplish. So you have laser focus, and in that laser focus, you start drawing information that's not coming from your head. That's the only way I can sort of kind of explain what happens. So I am not thinking when I'm in that zone, but information is coming out. And I used to do that for exams. Can you believe it? I used to ace my exams because that's how I did my exams. And I didn't know that that was what I was doing. Now I look back at it and I realize I was channeling when I wrote all my exams.
That's crazy. Yeah. You said, she said she's written 12 books, and that's amazing. It's amazing, because I'm just trying to write one. But when she said she wrote 12 books, and you were like, oh, it's kind of nothing, because I flowed it, which means like you didn't make it hard. You just let it come to you.
Yes.
And, I mean, did that include the idea for the book as well?
Yes. So the way it works with me is the idea pops into my head and I get excited. It's like, oh my God, I got to do this. And then I just let it gestate. It just sits there. I don't immediately take the idea and start writing. I just let it gestate in my head, let it simmer there. And then one day there's this huge desire to start writing because a lot has accumulated. And then it just comes out. It's like I close the door and it takes me a couple of days and I just write from page 1 right to the end. So there's no break. I don't organize the material. It automatically organizes itself.
Well, and you're not like critiquing. So that's one of the things that I do, and I think a lot of people do, is as they're writing, they're critiquing and editing as they go. It's a gift, and it's obviously like something you've mastered, that you can just like let it flow and trust. That's trusting the process. It's trusting that you are a tool that is bringing this information from somewhere.
I'm the conduit.
Conduit. Yeah.
Right. So anyone can do it. It's not something special that only I or a few other people can do. But I think a lot of people do it. Some people call themselves empaths. What are they doing? They are tapping into other people's energy. That's what an empath does. As a channel, I don't tap into other people's energy. I can, and I used to, but I stopped doing that because I realized that was not helpful. So now I only tap into people's energy when I'm coaching them, because I want to know more about them than what they are telling me with their words. But so it's very easy when you start trusting that the information that you are tapping into is coming from a good place. Here's where it goes wrong. There is all sorts of energy in the world. There are energy forms that are anger, for example, is an energy. And so that anger is floating out there, because once anger is expressed out into the universe, it doesn't go away. So there are these energy bands that are all around us. We are in a soup of energy, and it's a soup of different types of energy at different frequencies. As an empath or as someone, and all of us have these antennas, we all have antennas that catch this energy. That's how we can read each other's vibe. That's how we have a feeling inside, because we are picking up and we are interpreting. Well, you can tap into energy at any level. So what you have to do, if you're going to flow energy from the universe, from that which we call God, if you're going to channel good stuff, you have to tap into that energy level. Because if you start tapping into lower energies, that's when you go into depression. That's when you feel you have no control over your life. That's when you feel that they're energy vampires and they're sucking your energy from you, because you're tapping into lower frequencies of energy. So what you need to do is to train yourself to block out those energies and tap only into the highest form of energy. And that happens by you bringing yourself to that energy place. So in the way that I do it, I get excited. When I get excited, that's what's happening to me, is I am now focused on the energy of excitement, which is a higher level of energy. Excitement comes from a good place. Failure does not create excitement, right? Excitement comes from a good place. So when you create that energy inside you, then you tap into that energy source outside you. And so what happens is when you reach that frequency level, you start channeling from the universe. And so the universe has all information, complete information about everything anywhere. And this is the reason why two people in two different parts of the world who have never met before can channel the same stuff, can come up with the same scientific discovery, because they were both tapping into source at the same time. So it's not like the idea was owned by, or this person came up with it, or this person came up with it. Source had it and they both got it from source.
That's
Right?
cool. Yeah.
So I didn't realize this, but as a child, because I used to always say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, to literally everybody, that can't be right. There's something wrong about your logic. I got used to discarding other people's ideas, opinions, and judgments. And so I didn't know it, but I was living my life in my own little space where I was not tapping into negative energies. And that just became a habit to stay in that space. And I've been doing it since a very long time.
When did you first realize that there was this ability, or that you could access information that was outside of your human brain?
When I wrote my first book. That's when I wrote my first book and I finished it, and I realized, oh, I did that exactly the way I would have done an exam. I now understand what I used to do when I wrote exams.
So you just unknowingly did it.
I did it unknowingly.
So yeah, it was kind of something that was, I don't know, maybe you were born with, and you had this gift, and it was just easier to tap into than somebody who has to, really learn it and study it and then apply it. I guess that's the difference.
Laurie, here's the thing, Laurie, we are all born with it, but we start listening to other people. And when we start listening to other people, we lose it. Because we learn, instead of listening to the voice inside, which is our connection with source, we start listening to people. So we start blocking the voice that's inside. That's the difference. I never did that. And my mother actually encouraged it because my mother said, use your sixth sense. She believed, she was a big believer in sixth sense.
Mm.
And she would always say, well, you have your sixth sense. What is your sixth sense telling you? And she would always tell us, oh, I used my sixth sense. I made this decision based on my sixth sense, not based on my logic, not based on anything. I just made this decision based on my sixth sense. And then she would always say, oh, see, I made the right decision because I based it on my sixth sense. So I guess as a child, I was in that environment where I had an adult who was showing me to follow my internal guidance.
That there
And
was another channel.
there was another channel. Yes.
That's
Yes.
great. That's so
Yeah.
great. Yeah. And so I guess we talked about flow, and I wanted you, because you said it just flowed out of me. It
Yes.
flowed out of me. And Jonathan Fields, who's somebody I follow, he came out with the Sparketype assessment. I love him because, the Sparketypes are amazing for people. So kind of figuring out what lights you up in life, right? But he talks about when you're lit up in life,
Exactly.
when you're fully lit up and coming from this place of pure joy,
Yes.
you go into this flow state. And so the flow state is it's kind of almost this place where you lose all sense of time. You lose sense of time. People have been in there before and they're like, oh my, I passed that exit, or I don't even remember, gosh, it's, the time has flown. What happened? And so I just was, is there a difference between channeling and flow? Flow is kind of a state of being, where like channeling to me is kind of like, well, you're doing and you're accessing. So what, can you explain the differences as you see them?
I don't think there's a very big difference between channeling and flow. Basically, when you are in flow, you are channeling.
Mm.
Except that when you are in flow, it's unconscious. When you are channeling, it's more a conscious tapping in. That's the difference between the way people do it.
But you say you're not thinking.
Yes.
So when you say you're not thinking, when you channel, some people might think, well, that's not conscious then, right? Or
yes, but you think about you think about tapping in. So there are people who actually make a decision that they're going to tap in. That's channeling. I don't make a decision because I don't have to make a decision, because most of the time I am connected. I live in that bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. So interesting. So you mentioned being an investment banker.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of different than what you do now a little bit. So unless you were channeling investments, that would be kind of cool. But yeah, so tell me, and you said in, the questions that I asked you before the interview, you said that you really changed your life. So at some point you didn't have wealth and you created wealth once you found the law of attraction. That's right. So I'd love to hear that story.
I didn't do it consciously. I just wanted it, and source led me to it. And that's what all trust and faith is about. You put it out there, and then you let go, and you accept the fact that whatever your next step is, good or bad, rough or easy, it is leading you to what you have asked for. And so you stop planning. You stop becoming obsessive about what am I going to do next, because your attitude becomes, the next step will appear. I don't have to think about it. It'll just come. So it takes all the stress out of life, because most of the stress in life comes from what's going to happen next and how should I plan it out? What am I going to do next?
Or worry about what you don't want to happen and the prevention of it.
Yes, exactly. Right? Exactly. So when you start living life with trust, you don't have to do any of that, because you just know, you have this knowing that you will always be led to whatever it is that you want. And so things become easy. And I've learned over the last little while more consciously that you just have to give birth to a desire and then not obsess over it. See, there's a subtle difference between passion and obsession. Obsession is coming to the same subject from a place of doubt, and passion is coming to the same thing from a place of knowing. And when you were talking about how there have been people who are in the flow and they create beautiful, amazing things, is that you are so passionate about what you're doing, and that is why you don't know how much time went by, because it's that feeling of, oh my God, this is really calling me. It's it's like reading a really good book that has you on the edge of your seat and you can't put the book down. That's how you feel when you're in that state of passion. And so passion and obsession look very similar, because to the outside person who doesn't realize the emotional internal state of an individual, obsession and passion look extremely similar, because you are nonstop on the subject. But when you're in passion, you're also in flow. You are not struggling your way to the thing that you're doing. Whereas when you're obsessed with something, there's struggle in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I what came to me when you said that is something that I've learned as a workaholic, always struggling to try to what's in me that makes me like so persistent and so unstoppable. And what comes up for me is that I feel like with passion, like obsession, there's noise.
Yes.
There's like a lot of noise with obsession. With passion, there's more silence. And I feel like I've learned that it's so important. Like with obsession, it's nonstop.
Yes.
Passion is like it's on your terms with obsession, right? You want to control it. And with passion, it's like you're relinquishing that.
And that's the difference.
I love that, how you put that. And, I put what place, I take notes because it's so valuable, but what place are you coming from? A place of passion or a place of obsession?
When you ask me what changed, is that I went from being obsessed to being passionate.
Yes.
Right. And then I went from being obsessed. So when I was obsessed with creating wealth, it was a struggle. But when I became passionate and I let go the control, it came.
Yeah. That's so good. So many people could learn that. Yeah. And what is it about that people just, and this was my problem, is I never really had any desires. I mean, my desire was to move up the corporate ladder, but that didn't ever satisfied me. That was just like left me empty. And so I never sat down. When you say, let go and you'll get what you desire, I think a lot of people haven't even written down their desires.
Here's the thing, Laurie. Desire is the essence of life. If you stop desiring, you stop living. You have desires, you're just not vocalizing them. You're just not putting words to them. And sometimes people don't do that because they are so afraid that if they put into words what they desire, that it will cause them to feel like overwhelmed, like, oh my God, this is so huge. How can I even begin this journey?
It's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think that there is anyone alive who does not have a desire. I think that people don't verbalize their desires, don't acknowledge their desires, because they're so afraid of making that acknowledgement that I want this thing. Because once you say you want it, now there's this internal urge that says, what are you going to do about it? That sometimes is very scary. Because if you're not satisfied, for example, with a corporate career, then the urge is, well, dump it. And then there's fear in that. Okay, if I dump it, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay all my bills? So the desire is there, but you don't verbalize it. You subdue your desires because you're so afraid of them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. What comes up for me is a chat conversation I had with my cousin yesterday. And she doesn't have a lot of money. She lives in Florida. She's from Massachusetts, but she lived in Massachusetts for a little while, moved back to Florida, and she's contemplating leaving Florida again. And so she just visited Massachusetts, and she goes, "You're going to think I'm crazy, but I want to move back back to Massachusetts." She hasn't even been in Florida like a whole year yet. And I said, "Well, why don't I said, what you need is a house in Florida and a house in Massachusetts." And her response was, "I can't afford that."
Yeah.
And I said, "You can have whatever you want." And then it changed her perspective. It's like, oh, it's like people cut themselves off just because of their current circumstances. So what do you say to those people who are just like, oh, yeah, easy for you to say?
Well, depends where that person is and what my relationship with that person is because I think that the best thing we can do to people, for people, is to give them hope. We can tell them, maybe you can't see a way towards it just now, but just let it simmer for a while, and something will come about. Things are changing all the time. And if I know them well enough and I know their journey, I will usually point out to them places that I've known that they were in a tight spot, and then they were able to do things that they didn't think they would be able to do. And so that kind of creates that opening that says, yeah, you've done it before. You never know what might happen. Just leave it alone. Something will come about. Just, you don't have to accomplish this right this minute, right?
Yeah, I use the example because it's like, and sometimes if you just put it out there that that's what you desire, then the universe will bring you an idea.
Exactly.
The things you don't even know that will realize. And I know that my coach always says, you don't know what's in store. You don't know, anything can happen. Money is energy, right? So money can come from anywhere. But we just have this box where we think, oh, money can only come if I personally produce it.
Exactly. And that's the problem. That is the issue. You're absolutely right. We put ourselves in a box, right? And we don't see any other way. But the problem is our sight is limited to what we can discern with the evidence that we've collected. But there's so much we don't know about. So how do you know that there is no way? Are you 100% certain that there cannot be a way? There's always a way. There's always a possibility. See, possibilities become probabilities. And once something becomes a probability, now it can become a certainty. But if you shut the door and you say that there is no possibility, then there is no way for it to manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to use the example too, because this totally happened to me where my mom's in assisted living and she can't take care of herself. And so her savings were depleted, and it was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And guess what? I get a letter from a place in Florida, a lawyer, that says, we found funds, $7,000 that belongs to your mother and your father. At first I thought it was a bogus, these scams.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so I have a brother-in-law who's a lawyer, and I said, can you look at this? And he goes, it looks legit. So then I called the law firm and they said, oh yeah. And apparently there's law firms that are set up just to do this. They go and they look at state funds that have been they're recouped or whatever.
Yeah.
And they took like $500 as their fee. Heck, I wouldn't even have had it if it wasn't for them. I was happy to give them $500. Yeah, and my mother got this money to help her survive, that like from nowhere. I didn't know, like if I had thought, it has to come from me because I'm the one who's taking care of her, how that would have overwhelmed me and whatever. I was like, I had applied for Medicaid for her. So yeah, it was like such this lift off our shoulders. And it was like, who would have thought? So that's a really good example of where you never know where it's going to come from.
Exactly. You just put it out there and then get off the subject. Don't go looking for it.
Don't dwell. Yeah.
You don't know where to find it, but the universe knows. Let the universe bring it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. And I did an episode about the difference between need and desire, and that need implies neediness.
Yes.
And so sometimes like I want, and so like just use desire is more about wishing. And so kind of put it out there as a kind of a dream, a wish kind of thing. And
exactly.
I liked that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did something very similar to that. I think a couple of weeks ago, I put it out there. I said, okay, universe, this month, I think I need 2 new coaching clients. And then I just put it out there and I left it and I said, I know better. I don't have to go looking. It'll happen. And then guess what? Within 3 days, 2 people I did not know from Adam, like didn't know them at all, approached me and said, will you take us on? 2 separate individuals. And I was like, okay, thank you, universe.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so
So
great.
you just put it out there. That's the thing, that this is where you stop worrying, because you ask and then you let it go and you just trust that it will come about.
I love it. And what a great way to live.
It is, because there's not as much, there's no panic at all. There's no worry at all. You just feel looked after.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 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 And do you think it's harder for people who maybe haven't ever felt looked after to develop that relationship?
Yes, it is. And I was one of them. I know it is not easy to make the switch. And I know that it doesn't matter how much, whatever other people tell you, you have to get your own evidence that says, yes, this can happen. And so you do that by noticing things that are already happening in your life. It's when, people say, oh, the little things matter. Absolutely, little things matter, because in small ways, it's already happening. You're just not taking note.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it starts with, and maybe this is a great tip to end with, is what I'm hearing you say is the tip is just ask the universe for some little piece of evidence.
Yes.
Just ask the universe for a little piece of evidence and trust that the universe will give you some little piece of evidence
that you're being heard. And I did those experiments in the beginning when I started my journey, like just saying, okay, I'd like to find a quarter. And then you find the quarter, or you ask for a rainbow, then you find the rainbow. I think the one that was very, very impactful for me was, it was snowing, because where I live, lots of snow. And I asked for a blue butterfly. And I found the blue butterfly on my Facebook. Next morning, I opened my Facebook and a friend of mine had posted a picture.
That's
and I was
crazy.
Like, there you go, universe, you found a way.
Yeah, it's never, you might have imagined a butterfly flying around, but it's always sometimes a surprise. My students, I've done this with my students as an exercise, and it's so interesting what they end up getting. One was found, she said, I used to pick up glass when I was a kid on the beach.
Yeah.
And I don't think she had been to the beach for a while, and she hadn't found glass for years and years and years. And she asked for a specific color of glass. And she went and she said, I wasn't on the beach more than 5 minutes. And I found I think she asked for a green piece of glass, and she found a blue piece of glass. And she was like, oh, well, that's good. Close.
Yeah.
Maybe it looks green in some lights. Well, yeah. And then she found a clear piece of glass. And then as she left the beach with her pieces of glass, guess what? There was a green piece of glass. Yeah. Yeah, I get chills just telling that story. I have a fun story too, because I was just doing it to like prove that it would work, but I was like, if it doesn't work, I just won't tell anybody. So yeah, and I went out in my yard. I've never found a 4-leaf clover. I have lots of clover in my yard, and I'm like, I'm going to give it 60 seconds, and I'm going to look down, and I'm going to see and there's going to be a 4. And I had, part of it too is believing that, believing that it's possible, right? And so I looked down at my feet, and I was like, and I looked for 20 seconds, didn't find it. And I was like, nah. And I was like, well, let me go over here and just, I'll check there. And then that'll be it. I found a 4-leaf clover.
There you go.
I mean, I seriously, I was like, oh, you have to believe it, but then yet you're still shocked. Yes.
It's beautiful when these things happen.
Yeah.
And it really helps if you make a journal where you record these things.
That's a great idea.
Because we forget. And what I like to do is at the end of the year, or when I feel like when I'm in a crappy mood, I will sit down with that journal and I'll go like, oh yeah, that happened. And then that happened. And then that happened.
Oh, that's so good. I'm
And
gonna actually add that to my
yeah,
my course to have them
it's
do a journal on what they're manifesting.
exactly, because
Yeah.
that makes you feel like the universe really does have my back.
Yeah. And I took that 4-leaf clover and I put it in a book somewhere and I have no idea where it is. It would be in my manifesting journal if I had one. That's awesome. All right. Thank you so, so much. This has been a lovely conversation. I knew that it was going to be a good, juicy one. So, yeah. So, tell me, what does living a not your average life mean to you?
Just waking up and being excited about the day. Just waking up and knowing that it's going to be a good day. Just having peace in your heart and not a single thing to worry about. Just knowing that you're looked after. Just knowing that when you get to the end of this day, you're going to feel satisfied. Just knowing that there is really nothing that you could not do. You could literally leave the house with the clothes on your back and you could create something out of nothing. Just knowing that you can do that because all you need is yourself. I think that is amazing. Knowing that you are enough. And
Yeah. 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 I
it.
think there's too many people that wake up, and I was one of them, that isn't excited about their day, that trudges off to a job they hate and doesn't feel like anybody or anything's going to change. And I love that. I do think that is not your average, because a lot of people can't do that. Don't know how to do that.
And I know that because I used to be one of those people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
have literally changed a lot, but it takes dedication to doing the work. You
Yeah.
can change anything that you want.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Sarah. It's so great talking to you. And I will put all your links in the show notes. So if people want to check in with you and get any more tidbits or follow you on your social, that would be amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.